This is Tommy Spalding, and happy Wednesday, April 12th. This is, I think, the 30th Heart-Led Leader Florida Club Managers Association webinar. We've been doing this for the last 3 years through COVID, every month, bringing in an incredible leader to teach the Florida Club leaders. And today we have a really special treat with my friend, Mike Maddock in Chicago, Illinois. I first met Mike years ago, like 15 years ago. He started an entrepreneurial kind of Titan retreat at MIT University, where he brings in the world's greatest entrepreneurs. And I was a keynote speaker years ago and met him and fell in love with his heart. But when you first meet Mike, it's really his head that you fall in love with, because he's probably one of the smartest people that I know. Mike is an entrepreneur. He's a keynote speaker. He's an executive coach. He's written 4 best-selling books, but he has brought 2 words to the industry. One is disruptors, and the other one is idea monkey. And he's written books on that, and he's here to talk about that, how to be a disruptor and bring in great ideas. And, you know, the Club Managers Association throughout the world, you know, there's thousands of clubs, and the ones that are really thriving are the ones that are not only heart-led leaders, but they're bringing great ideas. Mike Maddock calls them the idea monkey. Let me give an example. There's not a person on this webinar or in the world that wouldn't say that Jeff McFadden, the GM at the Union League in Philadelphia, is in the top 3, if not the top GM in the world. And why is it that? I'm good friends with Jeff, and many of you are. He's a smart guy, just like many of you, but he is an idea monkey. He brings incredible ideas to his club and disrupts the whole club industry. When he finds out that most of his club leaders in Philadelphia love the Jersey Shore and many of his members have homes at the Jersey Shore, what does he do? He buys a restaurant and privatizes it on the Jersey Shore. And so he is an idea monkey and a disruptor. And Mike is here to talk about how do we bring that to the club industry. On a personal note, about a month ago, something happened to me that was life-changing, and I want to share it with you as friends. I went to the dentist 3 weeks ago and did the regular teeth cleaning. And the dentist looks in the back of my throat, you know, that they do that cancer check. And my dentist said, Tommy, there's something in the back of your throat that does not look right. You need to see an ear, nose, and throat doctor like ASAP, which really scared the shit out of me. And the first thing I did was I called the ENT doctor and got an appointment with them on Wednesday. And then Wednesday morning, I went to see the ENT, and sure enough, I had you know, telescopes and, you know, cameras up my nose and down my throat, and they found a 1-inch tumor in the back of my throat 3 weeks ago. And the ENT says, this does not look good, and we need to get this thing out. And sure enough, 24 hours later on Thursday morning, I'm at the hospital having emergency surgery, trying to remove this tumor out of my throat. At first, I was scared of losing my voice. Second, you know, the doctor said there's a chance that this could be cancer, and we're going to do a biopsy, and we're going to pray that it's benign, but it could be malignant. And it took 6 damn weeks, 6 damn days to figure out the results. And I shared this story with my close friends, but those 6 days were the most beautiful, scary days of my life, because I've never thought about cancer before. And I've never been scared of it before, and I've never had anyone in my family have it before. And the thought of, you know, possibly getting it was really humbling for me, and brought my wife and I closer, my kids closer, made me really think about my life, my mortality, and really made me understand what cancer is all about. Thank God it was benign. But my friend Mike Maddock has dealt with his battle of understanding what cancer is all about, and he's going to share that personal story. But I wanted to tee that up with you because I've always respected Mike as just a smart, amazing human being. But watching him and his family deal with cancer the way that they did made me love him. We're in for a real treat. Thank you, Mike, for blessing us with your smarts and your heart. And you're going to love this Florida Club Managers Association, and they're going to be really blessed by the message you're going to share with them this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Tommy. I'm so happy you're okay. I didn't know that story, so thank you for sharing it. And man, my heart was beating pretty hard there listening to your story. So thank God you're okay. That would be tragic if people couldn't hear you speak. Let me share my screen, and I'll take you through a quick presentation. Okay, so I tell my friends like Tommy that my purpose is to inspire and empower curiosity. I want to make you believe you can change the world, and I want to give you the tools, the connections, the relationships to do it. And so I'm going to give you a lot. I'm from the Midwest. That means a couple things. It means I'm going to speak really quickly, and it also means I'm going to try to shove 2 pounds of potatoes into a 6-ounce sack. So I want to tell you that I'm going to cover a lot of ground here. And everything that I talk about comes with a white paper, a book, a HBR article, a Forbes article. So there's a lot of information that'll back up the things I'm talking about. It also comes with a phone number and an email address. If you have any questions or want information, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to share with you more information. I wrote a book, and it's called Plan D, and Plan D is about disruptors. Contextually, the reason I wrote this book is because for the last 25 years, for the last 32 years, I've run a consulting firm that is an innovation consulting firm. What we do is we help leaders who are getting punched in the face by the future. I love the Tyson quote, everyone has a plan till you get punched in the mouth. They call us because something is changing in their industry, and they're looking for a new product, a new service, or a new business model to face that change. And so what we do is we help them do research and stand up a new product or service. So everything I'm going to talk to you about is informed by speaking to people like you, disruptors who are in the middle of trying to pivot or change something. And these are some of the lessons that I've learned from them, specifically some of the questions that I've learned from them. The other thing that informed this book is forum. I've been involved with YPO, EO, Vistage for the last 3 decades. The most important part of that is a forum. This is a close group of friends that gets together, and peers, people that run businesses, that get together once a month, 4 hours a month. And this group of people is my first forum. We've been getting together now for 23 years. And as you can imagine, after 23 years of getting together every month, we've talked about some really heavy stuff. We've talked about, making payroll, the employee that you lost that you wanted to keep, the employee that you had that you can't get rid of, christenings, divorces, bar mitzvahs, etc. And every one of these people is a disruptor. This is David Kaplan. Dave Kaplan, the guy that took his company from 0 to number 18 on the Inc. 500 list. Dave Kaplan, the guy that keeps a pile of money in his pocket so he can reward people whenever he sees something that he likes. Dave Kaplan, the guy that is the father of 3 beautiful boys. Dave Kaplan, the guy that went into his garage one afternoon and he killed himself. And none of us saw it coming. How could that be? After being with someone every month for decades, how did we miss that? The question is, or the answer is, we weren't asking the right questions. And Dave wasn't asking the right questions. So what I want to talk to you about today are questions that disruptors, the best disruptors I've ever known, constantly ask themselves. And by asking these questions, they can pivot and change the world. Specifically, 3 buckets of questions. Number 1, do I have a yin for my yang? Number 2, am I an inventor or am I an innovator? Do I have a team of inventors or do I have a team of innovators? And then I guess most importantly, how do I build a team of creators even when the worst possible thing is happening? When there's a global pandemic and you can't host live events, what do you do to keep the wheels on? I know all of you have faced that. So I'll start by talking about Larry Walters. Larry Walters had a dream. Larry Walters wanted to fly, but unfortunately for Larry, he was born with really bad eyesight, which meant he could barely get a driver's license. He couldn't get a pilot's license. He couldn't get into the military. But Larry was an idea guy. Larry was a dreamer. He wanted to fly, and he figured that all he needed to make his dream of flight come true was some kind of vehicle. And in this case, he chose his favorite lawn chair, which he named Inspiration One. Larry would need something to propel Inspiration One. In this case, he chose 75 weather balloons, which he acquired illegally, Reed stole, and he attached them to Inspiration One. Larry's unplanned plan was to float above his backyard, have a sandwich, take some pictures, talk to his girlfriend on a walkie-talkie, drink a beer, maybe a 6-pack of beers, and then after his maiden voyage was over, take out a BB gun and start popping balloons and float gently down to his backyard. Now you're asking yourself, what could possibly go wrong? So on the day of his maiden voyage, he calls to his girlfriend and says, honey. She walks out into the backyard. There's Larry floating 50 feet above his Jeep, which is tethered to Inspiration 1. He's sitting in Inspiration 1 and he says, honey, it's time to fly, cut the cord. And she's like, are you kidding me? You're really doing this? He goes, cut the cord, I want to fly. You're an idiot, cut the cord, whatever, snip. This is where you cue that something bad is about to happen music, because within seconds, our hero Larry is floating 16,000 feet above his backyard, and he's a little freaked out. Right about now, there are commercial jetliners approaching LAX reporting what appears to be a guy floating by in a lawn chair. So Larry doesn't panic. He eats a sandwich, drinks 6 beers. He's talking to his girlfriend. He says, all right, I'm coming down. Takes out his BB gun, shoots a balloon, nothing happens. Then another balloon, still nothing. Then another one, nothing happens. Then he drops his BB gun. So Larry is lucky, if nothing else. He eventually starts to lose altitude. He gets tangled up in the main power lines that feed Long Beach County, thus taking out the power for the entire county for the next 4 hours. He's arrested for violating all kinds of FAA regulations. A week later, he's fined $4,000 for said FAA violations. The next week, he wins the Bonehead of the Year award from the Dallas Daily News. And then 2 months later, he comes in runner-up for the Darwin Awards. Now, the Darwin Awards are given to people that improve the human species by eliminating themselves from it. He came in second because he survived. So when I heard this story, I thought, what a knucklehead. I mean, who would do that? I just couldn't believe that anyone would fly in a lawn chair. And then I had this horrifying realization that I'm Larry Walters, and I hope some of you are too. That story was told to me by Dr. Ed Hallowell, TED to his friends. He's the leading authority on ADHD. And Dr. Ted argues that wherever there's great invention, wherever there's great disruption, there's Larry Walters. There's someone who believes that flying in a lawn chair actually is a good idea. It takes a little bit of crazy, I call these people idea monkeys, to pivot and to change an industry. When I was a kid, I was a big fan of Walt Disney. I mean, the happiest place on earth, the Magic Kingdom, the talking mouse, all I wanted to do was to go to Disney World, but we didn't have a lot of money. And so we couldn't afford to go. So my friends started sending me books about Walt Disney, and I started reading up on Walt Disney. And the more I read, the more I realized that it wasn't Walt, but his brother Roy who gave us the happiest place on earth, talking mice and the Magic Kingdom. There's a story, it's Monday morning, and here comes Roy. He's walking to, or here comes Walt, he's walking to work and he's whistling and chain smoking, because that's what you did back then. He gets to his office and there's Roy. Roy hasn't left the office the whole weekend. And Roy's all disheveled, and it looks like a scene from The Beautiful Mind. There's all these, chalk marks on the board. And Roy goes, Walt, I've been here all weekend. I'm thinking about your little idea. Your little idea, Walt, is going to cost us over $2 million. $2 million. To which Walt responds, Roy, why do you bother me with these insignificant details? Wherever there's a Walt, there's a Roy. If you want to see an organization that knows how to scale, look for an idea monkey and a ringleader that are getting along perfectly. If you're an idea monkey, this is what your sketch pad looks like. This is what your notepad looks like. My nickname at work was Squirrel, because I'd walk in and go, what about this? What about this? What about this? I was easily distracted. I was a lateral thinker. If you're a ringleader, this is how you think. Now, this gives me hives. I can hardly look at it. But if you're a systems thinker or a critical thinker, this is how you think. Without being political, by the way, this is what it takes to get a green card in the United States. So if you think it's easy, you're a ringleader. Idea monkeys are about divergence. They want to predict the future. It's about ideas, ideas, ideas. You can test to see if you're an idea monkey. I love the Colby test. If you're a 3-3-9-3 or a quick start, congratulations, you're an idea monkey. Idea monkeys are about ready, fire, aim. Anything is possible. Here's the thing. We have jazz hands. We have sparkle fingers. We can walk into a room, any room, and make you believe this idea, this innovation is going to change the world. And every once in a while, we're right. And then there's the ringleader. They're about convergence. They want to prove it, process. On the Colby, if you're a high fact finder and high follow through, congratulations, you are a ringleader. I call these people idea killers because they're always talking about why something won't work, but it's the ringleader that keeps the idea monkey in balance by staying calm and staying focused and staying the course. Which are you? If we were in a room together, I'd have you raise your hands. About half of you would identify with Walt Disney, and I would offer to have a beer with you later today and say, let's ideate together, because that would be really fun. And about half of you would raise your hand and say, I'm more like Roy Disney, to which I would say, you complete me. What does that mean? What it means is that most startups are born from an idea monkey's mind, and most startups are out of business within 18 months or 3 years, depending on which data you look at. But look at what happens to Fortune 500 companies, or I should say what's happening. The average Fortune 500 company is extinct in less than 15 years now. And that's a trend that's accelerating, extinct in less than 15 years. I was on the board of advisors for General Electric. I remember going to 30 Rock and going to the top floor and walking down a long white hallway filled with black and white pictures of middle-aged white guys that had run that company. And another advisor said to me, you know why we're here, right? You know why we're here? And I said, yeah, we're here to help them innovate. He goes, well, kind of. Do you know it's been 13 years since General Electric, Thomas Edison's company, has launched a new product or service or business model based on their new patents? 13 years. One of the greatest inventors of all time, his company had turned into such a ringleader-led organization. Jack Welch had done such a great job that they could Six Sigma, they could mitigate risk, and they could not have any ideas. The answer is in the balance. There's this dance between idea monkeys and ringleaders, between big visionaries and big operators. And when this is almost like a love affair, when they're diverging and converging and diverging and converging, you accelerate ideas through your organization. So you see this wherever there's great innovation. Every great company at the top of that organization has both a great operator and a great visionary. And the first book I wrote was called Brand New: Solving the Innovation Paradox. The innovation paradox is the harder we try to innovate, the worse we get at it. And we did all kinds of research to prove that's true. Accenture just did more research. It's more true 10 years after I wrote that book today than it was back then, before innovation became a buzzword. So the good news is that there are settled truths in terms of practice. When an idea monkey wants to brainstorm, a ringleader will say about what, and they'll focus on insight ranking. When a idea monkey wants to do research like ethnographies, the ringleader will say, well, let's first do a segmentation to understand who we're talking to. And that's that dance, that divergence and convergence dance that makes ideas happen. A quick story about an idea monkey and a ringleader. I know Jimmy John and I know Jim Leotold and Jim Leotold. God rest his soul. Jim Leotold asked me to run one of his companies. And when he was talking to me about it, he told me this story. So it's 12 weeks into Jimmy's freshman year at Eastern Illinois University. He gets a call from Charleston, Illinois. And it sounds like this: Dad, I hate school. I suck at school. I've always hated school. I've always sucked at school. Why am I down here at school? And forgive me, I'm going to quote Jim. I have two sons, and the way he responded to Jimmy is not how I'd respond to my sons, but this is what he said. Well, fuck it, son. What do you want to do? And Jimmy said, well, I think I want to start a sandwich shop. Now, what could possibly go wrong? A 12-week college dropout competing against McDonald's and Subway and Wendy's and Burger King. But Jim didn't say, you're nuts, you shouldn't fly, Jimmy. He said, well, let me ask you a question. Are you open to a little bit of help? To which Jimmy said, sure, Dad, give me some help. Now, what he meant by that, what you need to know about Jim is he was a ringleader. He was an entrepreneur. The next time one of your friends gets saved by an airbag, you can thank Jim, because it was his engineering and his patents and his companies that he sold for hundreds of millions of dollars that allowed your friend to be saved by an airbag. So when he said, Jimmy, are you open to a little bit of help? What he was really saying is, can I help you build the systems, the processes, so that you can fly? And this year, Jimmy John's will do over $2 billion worth of sandwich sales, with a B, $2 billion. You don't sell $2 billion worth of sandwiches unless you're measuring every slice of tomato, every shred of lettuce, and they do. But really, you do not sell over $2 billion worth of sandwiches unless a ringleader father loved his idea monkey son. Who completes you? Who is the yin for your yang? Disruptors find a yin for their yang. They stay in balance. I'll talk a little bit more about balance. about balance in a second. Another question, what's the biggest opportunity in my industry? A Napster moment is when someone with no business being in your business comes along and puts you out of business. Someone with no business being in your business comes along and puts you out of business, just like a 16-year-old did to the record industry when he wrote a line of code so that he could listen to one song at a time. At the time, the CEO of Sony said, this guy, I didn't think this kid was a mosquito worthy of swatting. I should have just bought him. Meanwhile, 87% of the record stores were going out of business. And his answer to that was, we just need bigger hits. The Napster moment happened because he had a blind spot. Years ago, I got a call from Procter & Gamble. I should say we did. I was really excited. The plan or brand new was written on the shoulders of Procter & Gamble. This is a company that puts a $50 million new product on the shelf quarterly against dozens of categories. And they know their customer's customer better than anyone else. So when they called me and said, hey, Mike, we want to hire your company to do some work for our dentist division. I go, what does that mean? He said, well, we have a professional division that serves dentists. I was elated. So we did all kinds of research, and we did qualitative, quantitative research. We figured out what the target, we hired all these experts. We brought them to a room. We rented a room in the St. Louis Zoo. And I remember we finally got to the good part for Idea Monkeys, the brainstorm. And I'm running around with ideas. And there's Play-Doh and Post-it notes and beanbag chairs. You've been in this room. There's hundreds of ideas on the wall at noon. And I walked up to one of P&G's clients and I said, isn't this great? I mean, this is unbelievable. Isn't this great? This is great. Look at all these ideas. And he looked at me, held up his hand. He said, stop. Do you know what I do for a living, son? And I remember looking up at him. He's like 7 foot tall to me. I said, you're a dentist? And he goes, that's right. And you know what that means? That means I'm a doctor. And you know what that means? That means I don't give a damn about white teeth. White teeth are a false proxy. Now, you and your friends here keep coming up with ideas about white teeth. And I'm here to tell you that you could have the whitest teeth in the room and your gums could be rotting. You know what I care about? I care about gingivitis. So for the rest of the day, I don't want to hear another idea about white teeth. And the next time you come into a room like this, I suggest you do your homework. Son, no, it's not going well. And he turned around and walked away. Now you can imagine that I was a different person. I mean, here I am thinking I'm letting down my client. Their client is angry at me. And so at the end of the day, I went up to my lead at P&G and said, I don't think that went really well. That guy yelled at me, and so did his friend. And to their credit, P&G said, no, you did great. We did our research. In so many words, if they don't want it, I know someone that does. Now, you probably know where this is going. That was the start of filling a $4 billion gap in the market for teeth whitening products. Out of that session came products like white strips and a whole line of whitening products. But what you probably don't know is that 10 years later, the association that apparently is designed to protect dentists from the future took a case to the Supreme Court arguing that only dentists should be able to whiten teeth, arguing that only dentists should be able to whiten teeth, and they lost. How does that happen? How can leaders have a solution brought to them that solves $4 billion worth of their customers' needs, and they don't see it? Here's the thing. You can't read the label when you're sitting inside the jar. You can't read the label when you're sitting inside the jar. Now, one of my friends, Todd Murphy's a gentleman from Alabama, and I can be pretty bullheaded, and we were in an argument. He's like, Mike, you're in the jar, my friend. Apparently, Southern gentlemen don't tell you to get your head out of your, and they say things like, you can't read the label when you're sitting inside the jar. I said, what did you say to me? Here's what it means. If you've been in an industry, in a relationship, in a job for more than 6 months, and if I was in the room, I'd have you raise your hand, and almost every one of you would raise your hand. Then I'd say, congratulations. You're an expert. You know what works. You know what doesn't work. You know what your boss wants. You know why Harry got fired. You know what's legal. You know what's illegal. You know. And the more you know, the harder it is for you to see possibility when it walks in right in front of you. And one of the things you miss is this question. Disruptors are really good at asking and answering the question, what business are we really in? What business are we in? This is my friend, Rick Jameson. Rick Jameson is the brake pad king of Canada. I called him about a month after the COVID pandemic started. And I said, hey, Rick, how's it going up there? And he's like, oh, it's great. Yeah, it's great. This COVID thing's scary, eh? It's scary, eh? I'm like, yeah, it's kind of scary. I think I already had it. Twice. Anyway, I go, so what are you going to do about it? You know, with supply chain issues, et cetera. He goes, well, you know, I think, have you heard about this ventilator shortage? I think I'm going to build ventilators. And I said, Rick, what right does the brake pad king of Canada have to build ventilators? He goes, oh, Mike, you think I'm in the brake pad business. I'm not in the brake pad business. What you need to know is I have a law degree and I'm a CPA. And you also need to know that brake pads have asbestos in them. That means they're a highly regulated product. You know what business I'm in, Mike? I'm in the highly regulated contract negotiation business. I spend all my time negotiating contracts in a highly regulated industry. And guess what? Medical products are highly regulated, and I think I can win contracts. And that's how the brake pad king of Canada won $500 million of POs inside of 90 days, and then figured out how to manufacture brake pads because he knew what business he was in. It's easy to forget the business you're in. If you're in a third generation drill bit company, for example, well, all you think about all day and all your employees think about all day is how do we make better drill bits? How do we protect our patents? How do we source better steel? How do we compete with China? How do we negotiate with Menards and Home Depot about drill bits? This is called marketing myopia. Marketing myopia was a term that was developed by Theodore Levitt in 1960. He argued that the reason why the barons of industry who own railroads, for example, today don't own every ship, every plane, and every train car is because they forgot that they thought they were in the railroad business. They didn't think they were in the transportation business. And if they had been less myopic, they would have been able to see that, oh my gosh, we have the right to be in a much bigger business than we think we're in. So as a leader, your job, perhaps the most important question I'm going to ask you today is, what business are you in? What business do you have the right to be in? Because the first person that comes around and says, we're in the whole making business, are going to put the drill bit business out of business because there's a cheaper, better, simpler way to make a hole than using a drill bit, perhaps. So the history is littered with all kinds of companies that forgot the business they were in. If we had more time, I'd tell you a story about getting into an argument with the chief technology officer at Kodak, who argued they were in the film or the chemical and paper business. And that's how Fuji put them out of business. Blockbuster. There are famous stories now about how the CEO told the staff, you don't understand the business we're in. He thought they were in the brick and mortar business. They weren't. So here's a hack that you can take back to your team today. You can ask Google what business you're in. First, get all your idea monkeys in a room and say, okay, what are the benefits that we deliver to our clients? Just say them out loud and try not to use industry terms. And you might hear things like, well, we're about informed solutions or education or quick research and thought leadership. Great. Type all those into Google and see what Google says what business you're in. That was an actual list that we typed for our client. Our client is on this list, and look at all these our client was Blue Cross. Look at all the non-competitive businesses that came up who think they're in the same business, or at least they're delivering the same benefits to their customers. And in every one of those companies, there's a really smart person with a title like Chief Innovation Officer, or Chief Strategy Officer. And I promise you that person likes beer or wine or pizza. I can also promise you they like being told that they're really smart. So when you call them and say, hey, I'm running a company, we're not competitors, you're really smart, can I buy you beer, wine, or pizza? Just talk about how you're solving solution or how you're solving problems for your customer. That allows you to see what business you might have the opportunity to be in and parallel engineer ideas that are non-competitive as a way to deliver new benefit to your customers. The difference between Tiffany and Company and every other jewelry store in the world is that Tiffany is in the business of taking the most special moments in life and memorializing them. They just happen to do that with jewelry. They also do it with trophies and statues. Anything to memorialize a great event, Tiffany's interested in doing. That's the business they're in. What business are you in? So you can't read the label when you're sitting inside the jar. Strategic creativity, the best definition that I've ever heard is the ability to come up with a variety, not quantity, a variety of ideas against a specific challenge and choose the right idea at the right time. So if I asked you, or if you asked your team, you're no longer profitable, how would you fix it? you'll get a few answers. I love this framework. This is the way you turn one way to turn your organization into a bunch of creators. You 1-3-1 it. So I walk into your office, say, boss, I think we got a problem. And you say, hold on a second. I want to 1-3-1 this. It's Friday afternoon. Let's meet on Tuesday for lunch and 1-3-1 it for me. What does that mean? That means I'm going to come back and say, I think this is the problem we have. Here are 3 different solutions to the problem, and here's my recommendation. Now, as the boss, you can say, I agree, I disagree. I think you got the problem right. I like the second solution better than the first one. I love your recommendation, great job. But what you've done is you flipped it. You no longer have someone that's victimized. They're creating a solution. The challenge is that you need a variety of solutions. The other challenge is we tend to surround ourselves with people that look like us, laugh at our jokes, and think like us. And I started with the story of the forum. Forums tend to be random. We're peers, we're in the same industry, be in a forum with me. I started a company 2 years ago with the idea of what if you tested leaders so that they saw problems differently, they were peers, and they shared the same values. Excuse me 1 second, I'm gonna cough. Excuse me. And so the 6 seats are the operator, the strategist, the rainmaker, the visionary, the tech futurist, and the orchestrator. What I want you to take away from this is most advisory boards, most teams are not balanced. And so when I say we're not making any money, if you're with a bunch of operators, they're going to say, all right, let's punish the P&L and cut costs. Strategists are going to say, are we measuring the right things? Rainmakers are going to say, we need more customers, we need more members. Visionaries are going to say, how come we don't have pickleball yet? We need to launch a new product or service. Technology futurists are going to say, yeah, because our tech stack is so outdated. If we had technology, we'd save costs and attract more members. And orchestrators might say something like, yeah, we have an accountability problem. We like each other too much, and we're not holding each other accountable. We don't trust each other enough to challenge each other. The question is, who's right? The answer is everybody's right at a moment in time. But unless you have the perspective of the operator, the strategist, the rainmaker, the visionary, the tech futurist, the orchestrator sitting around the table, you'll never have that idea. So when you go to 1-3-1 it, you want people to see the problem at least 6 different ways. So as leader, you can say, okay, maybe I'm looking at it the wrong way. There's a rule in design thinking that if you keep trying to solve the same problem again and again and again and again, and you can't seem to solve the problem, you're probably working on the wrong problem. So how do you get a team that will see problems differently? And the answer is a balanced group. So moving from idea monkey to ringleader, here's 4 other roles that you need around the table. Disruptors get curious, they don't get furious. So when you find yourself not letting go for a better grip, you're really upset about something, it might be that you're stuck. And the question you should be asking yourself is, what am I missing? What other perspective do I need around this challenge? Next question, under pressure, does my team create or complain? Years ago, I was hired just out of college to be an art director at a small design firm. And I was wheeled into a conference room. There were about 40 people in the room. My boss said, hey, everybody, this is Mike Maddock. He's gonna be a new art director here. And he started going around the table. This is Joe, this is Tom, this is Ruth, this is Ruth, this is Ruth. And I remember looking at this amazingly beautiful woman, and time just stopped. It was a moment for me. I went home that night and I said, hey, Mom, I met the girl I'm gonna marry today. And she's like, that's nice, honey. How was your first day at work? I'm like, no, I mean, I met the girl I'm married today. Now that turned out to be a really bad thing for Ruthie because she'd been dating the same guy for 5 years. So for the next 8 months, I did everything I could possibly do to get the attention of Ruth McCausland. I made a complete idiot out of myself. I embarrassed her, I embarrassed me. There's a phrase for this now. It's called sexual harassment, but I was young and I didn't know any better. 8 months in, it was Joe's birthday the next day. And I'm like, what can we do for Joe? We decided we were gonna order Chinese food. So I went home constantly thinking about how to get Ruthie's attention, and I hatched a plan. I'm like, okay. So I went to a bulk food store, bought all these fortune cookies, tweezered out the fortunes, took an old-fashioned typewriter, typed up new fortunes, and then waited in the parking lot the next day for the food to arrive so I could switch my fortune cookies out with the Chinese food store fortune cookies. And I sat at the table and waited for people to finish their meal and open the fortune cookies. And when they did, all the fortunes said things like, choose Mike, dump Pat, how about Mike? I remember people looked at Ruthie and said, I think he might like you. And she's like, you think so? She turned all red. The good news is it worked. A 34-year adventure with Ruth Carol McCausland ensued. So why am I telling you this story? I'm telling you this story because when you are being punched in the face by the future, or when you at work say we need to change something, there is drama. Drama comes along with change, and drama keeps change from happening. And so years ago, David Emerald, a friend of mine, wrote a book called The Empowerment Dynamic, The Power of TED. And he was drafting off the work of Stephen Cartman, who's a Harvard professor in the 60s, around this framework called the drama triangle. So now I do workshops on this, and I'm going to cram a half day's worth of macro thinking into about 5 minutes here. But I want to share with you the drama triangle because it's a way that you, when under pressure, you can have a team of creators instead of feeling victimized by the future. So the first thing you're looking for is someone complaining. You're listening for the language of complaint. They can be complaining about the coffee, the weather, the tea times, the fees, the members, whatever it is, they're complaining. And it can be you complaining or they're complaining. The reason is because drama can't happen unless someone is willing to play the role of the victim. And the victim is the one complaining. That is your cue to go, drama. I want you in your head, when you hear yourself or someone else complaining, to go, drama. Don't do it out loud because people think you're weird, but that's your trigger. You're like, drama, there's drama happening. The next thing you do is try to identify the players in the drama triangle. We've already said the victim is the one complaining at their best, at our best. When we choose to play the role of the victim, we're just having a bad moment. We want to complain, we want someone to listen. At our worst, we create our own drama so we have something to complain about. You know people like this. No matter how good life is, they find something to complain about. Why? Because they're being fed by the rescuer. The rescuer is the person they're complaining to. They're, oh, that sounds really hard. At the best, the rescuer is this big-hearted individual. At the worst, the rescuer actually creates drama so they have someone to rescue. My mom's a rescuer. She's a beautiful woman. She's got the biggest heart of anyone I know. She'll call me. It'll sound like this. Mike, how are you doing? I'm good, Mom. Do you have a cold right now? Did you just cough? I think you have a cold. Mom, I'm fine. You're traveling a lot. We're all worried about you. You're running too hard. I'm like, Mom, I'm fine. Did you talk to your brother? I think his marriage is in trouble. I'm like, God, Mom, she's trying to create drama, not because she thinks she's creating drama. She's looking for someone to help. That's what the rescuer does. The persecutor is the object or the person that is the object of complaint. A persecutor that's a person is like the great Santini. This is the coach that yelled at you and screamed at you, or the boss that demeaned you. You're no good. You're the worst. Get your act together. You're terrible. At their worst, persecutors are just having a bad, or at their best, they're just having a bad day. At their worst, they feel bigger and stronger by putting other people down. We all have a role that we run to. And you can't change someone else, but you can change your role in the dynamic. Let me say that again. You can't change someone else unless you change your role in the dynamic. By changing the way you're interacting with that person, you can make drama go away. Or you can move to the empowerment dynamic. The idea is to move from being rescuer to coach, persecutor to challenger, and victim to creator. And there's language and ways to do all of this. I am a persecutor at my worst because I want to challenge people. The keys to the castle from moving from a persecutor to a challenger is that people know that you care and love them so much that you're not going to let them get away with it. So as a young man, I assumed people knew I was nice and trying to be good to them. And they're like, screw you, man. Don't tell me what to do. And I'm like, as an old man, I've learned I have to start by going, hey, man, I love you, right? I really care about you. Yeah, you know that, right? So no, I'm not going to, you're better than this, dude. You're better than that. Come on, step up. You can figure this out. And the coach goes from rescuing to asking unattached questions. Might there be something missing? I want to talk about the victim because it's the moving from victim to creator is what we all want our teams to do, be in the empowerment dynamic. There are 3 questions that you can ask yourself or someone else if you see them playing the role of the victim. Questions are, what is the outcome I want? Or what is the outcome you want? You know, this is a treasure hunt. If you find yourself really, really mad about something or really upset about something, there's a commitment that's being violated. So the treasure hunt is, what is it that's got me so upset? What is the outcome I'm trying to get that's not happening here? What's the outcome I want? Once you answer that question, the next question is, okay, so now what stands in my way? Now you're moving into strategy. I want this outcome. What stands in my way? Now you're in creator mode because you're building a strategy. And who has already figured this out? Who can I go to get some hacks, to get some shortcuts? These questions activate the challenger, the creator, and the coach. So if you can ask these questions when you hear the language of complaint, you're going to move into the empowerment dynamic. Now, I started by telling a story about Ruthie. About 2 years ago, we were out in Las Vegas. My son, Cody, was a kicker in high school, a highly recruited kicker, but then there was COVID. And you know, his senior year was canceled. So we went to a kicking camp because he was trying to get noticed by schools. He'd gotten one D1 offer, but he wanted to go somewhere else. And I noticed that Ruth was up dancing. She had a mask on, and one of the coaches came over and started dancing with her, and I filmed it. It was an amazing moment. The next night we were back in Chicago, and I was in my office writing, and the last I saw Ruthie, she was out cutting Cody's hair on the porch, on the back porch. It's a beautiful night. And next thing I know, she stumbled in the office and she was crying and all upset. I said, what's going on? And she's trying to tell me a story about how she was hungry, so she'd made herself some salsa and chips. And when she was reaching for the salsa, she couldn't find the dish. And then she started talking about seeing sparks in the sky. And I immediately thought, oh my gosh, something's really wrong. So I went looking for my phone and I couldn't find my phone. And I saw her phone. I said, can you call my phone? Because I wanted to Google stroke. I thought she might be having a stroke. And I saw her, she could not operate her phone. So I told our kids, we're going to go to the hospital. I threw her in the car. We ran to the hospital emergency room. When you say stroke in an emergency room, everything goes crazy. They threw her in her wheelchair, raced her away. 20 minutes later, a doctor came out to me and said, Mr. Maddock, your wife is not having a stroke. There's a mass in her brain, and we have to determine whether the cancer started there or somewhere else. And everything changed. I remember making a stupid joke about lack of foreplay to the doctor. And then I went to the lobby and I called my friend Ari, Dr. Ari, a forum member. And I begged him for help and started sobbing. So cancer was victimizing my wife and our family. And it sucked. I remember going to her and saying, okay, honey. Now the good news is, if there is good news here, that when I learned about the drama triangle, I trained I got my executive team trained on it. Then I learned how to do it, trained our forums, and then our spouses came and got trained, and then we trained our kids. So we'd all been trained on this framework. And I went to Ruth and I said, this is horrible. This is going to be really bad. What do you want to make happen? What's the outcome you want? And Ruthie said, I want people to see my faith grow during the struggle. And I had my mission. I talked to my kids and they needed something to do with all that energy. So we started a foundation so that they could raise money and donate money, and her friends and family could do that too. And then I started to write a book about how to manage really complicated problems that I haven't finished yet, called The Crisis Cocktail. So Ruthie danced into heaven on August 19th. We had 20 months together, making her mission real, showing her friends and family how her faith grew. About 3 days after I found out that my wife had an aggressive glioblastoma, my coach called me and said, I want to tell you a story, a parable. He told me this parable. There's a monk walking in the jungle and he hears a branch crack. He turns around and he sees that he's being stalked by a tiger. So he starts to run. The tiger's chasing him. Panicked, he jumps off a cliff and hangs from a vine. He looks up, the tiger's circling above him, looks down a couple 100 feet, and there's a tiger at the bottom of the cliff waiting for him to fall. That moment, he looks at the vine and there's a rat gnawing on the vine that he's hanging from. So things are pretty bad. He looks to his right and sees a wild strawberry plant growing out of the side of the mountain. And he reaches for a strawberry and he eats it. And in that moment, the strawberry and life were perfect. My friend and coach said, Mike, you guys got to be looking for strawberries. So over 20 months, we managed to find a lot of strawberries. There's a terrific book, a terrifically horrific book by Viktor Frankl called Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl was a famous neurologist and psychologist in Germany during World War II. He was put in prison in a Nazi death camp. He saw his mom, his dad, his brother, and his wife die. He saw his thesis burn. So there was no question that Viktor Frankl was being victimized. But Viktor Frankl decided not to take on the role of the victim. Instead, he decided to be a creator in the most horrific of settings. And there's a wonderful quote in the book: between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. So when you hear the language of complaint and in your head say, drama, what is your response to that? What is the choice you're going to make? And I will tell you that disruptors absolutely refuse to play victim. So I said I was here to inspire and empower curiosity. What I want you to leave being curious about is the yins for your yangs. Do you have a soulmate? Do you have a yin for your yang? Do you have a balanced executive team? I would recommend using the Kolbe. If you're interested, send me your Kolbe results. Now, I don't work for Kolbe, but I'm happy to interpret them and tell you of those 6 seats where you'd sit, and maybe you're number 2. Are we inventors or innovators? Innovators start with a need and then have an idea. Inventors start with an idea and go looking for a need. Be really good at finding out the hate in your industry. I like to say, embrace the hate to innovate. What do people really hate about your industry? Don't think about what they love. What do they hate? If you can get in front of that hate, a Napster moment will happen in your industry, but it'll be you that creates it. And then how do I create a team of creators or build a team of creators? Move from, ask the questions, what's the outcome I want? What stands in my way? And who can help me get there? And most of all, please keep looking for strawberries. Thank you so much.
Mike, there's not a dry eye. There's not a dry eye on this webinar. Thank you for sharing your heart. Thank you for sharing Ruthie's story. You know, of all my friends, you have friends that say, oh yeah, their marriage is average or they're not going to make it. But when I thought of you and Ruthie's marriage, even before I knew about her cancer, I thought you had one of the best marriages I've known. You guys really are the yin and yang for each other. So before I go into the questions of the work stuff, a lot of these leaders at clubs work 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 hours. I've never seen an industry work more hours than the club industry, and so dedicated to their work. But how do you also stay married and in partnership well? And after 34 years of being married to Ruthie, can you just shed some advice on the difference between a good marriage and a great marriage?
Yeah, one of the great things about being in Forum is that I have literally dozens of friends that know me, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and vice versa. And one of the weird blessings is that I know that good marriages are really rare. And you're right, Ruth and I had 34 years together, and it was like winning the Super Bowl. I mean, it's so hard for me to be, I hold gratefulness and grief in 2 different hands, and gratefulness always wins because I had it. She was so wonderful and a great mom and friend. So a lot of it had to do with luck. I'll say that, if she's a real blessing. But what I've noticed is that, prioritizing, number one, I always cared about her happiness more than mine. I'm a servant leader. I really, really lived to make her happy, and it made me happy when she was happy. Number two, and this is just a simple practice, I would schedule, we had a date night that was sacred. I'd schedule family trips before the year started because I knew that my calendar was going to fill in around it. It's like the rocks, pebble, sand thing. The rocks for me were family time, and I'm scheduling those first because the world's going to like fill in around it. And that really allowed us to make memories. And finally, I just wrote an article in Inc. magazine. It's in Inc.com, and it's about this topic, the lessons I learned from grieving my wife. I'd encourage you all to read it. The number one lesson is, at the end of the day, love is all that matters. It really is. I mean, we all just live to love, and I don't think putting off love is a good idea. And in fact, I know it. One of my best friends died the day before his 40th birthday. Ruthie's mom died at 16 of cancer. I was in a science fair final in 7th grade with Mike Roach. He died the next year of cancer. We had so much of that in our lives that we just said, screw it, man. This is an irrational financial decision. We're doing it anyway because we're making memories. So I would put memories and love way up on your list, and all the other stuff is secondary.
I love that. Thank you. I didn't tell you, I've never told you this, but I followed Ruthie on her Caring Tree blog for those 20 months of her battle, and it was really inspiring. I think that could become a book itself. I love her. Yeah.
Yeah, we started a Caring Bridge page because one of her friends, the yin for my yang, said, everyone's going to drive you crazy. Everyone loves Ruth. You're going to be on the phone all day. So I started posting on Caring Bridge about Ruth, and my mission was to carry the flag of her faith, and it was a privilege. It was a real privilege. So thank you for reading it.
Yeah, and my faith grew as well. Trying to change gears because I want to ask some questions. You have consulted 25% of the Fortune 100 companies. I work with a lot of thought leaders, and I've never done that, and that's a lot. And so you have this knowledge of disruptors and ideas and ringleaders and all this you've done to help reinvent, Fortune 500 companies. I know you belong to a couple of clubs in Chicago. You walk in and you experience, the F&B, the golf, you experience it, and just you're talking to club leaders. Is there anything that you could share just with your experience in your own club, without naming your club? Some ideas that you think club leaders should be bringing to their clubs.
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and I had never thought of it, Tommy, but just as an idea monkey, this is fun. I think there's a real gap in community in this country. We used to get our community at church and, sports and neighborhood, and there are these silos growing. I think if I owned a club, I would be doing everything I could to build a community inside and outside the club. Now that runs in the face of probably what a lot of people think about clubs, but I think I would be more inclusive and less exclusive. I would find ways to build forums and build community impact. So the club was becoming famous as a force of good and relationships. So I'd start with, think about poker. I remember going into my golf club and going in the back, don't you people have jobs? And people were playing poker. And I learned as I got older, it was really a beautiful thing. These are a bunch of people like just in community. What other activities could you bring a bunch of people together so that they know each other better? I think thought starters, where it's not like if I ran a club, I would start every roundtable with a really big question. Hey, you guys, have a conversation about this question. Questions that build relationships to get people from doing small talk to deep talk. The more kerosene you can throw on community and relationships, the stronger the club you're going to have. I would think.
Love it. Last question, Mike, is To be a heart-led leader, you have to know your strengths and your weaknesses. If you're not really humble, you can work on that. If you're not very authentic, you can work on that. If you're not very transparent, you can work on that. What the challenging thing when I listen to you is like, be an idea monkey or a disruptor. That's not a given quality that God gave me, And so I really need to work on that. And I bet you a lot of the people on the call maybe feel the same. So if you want to become an idea monkey, if you want to be a disruptor, a ringleader, you want these innovative qualities, what kinds of things can we do? What kind of books, what kind of resources? How could we grow in that arena in our professional careers?
Yeah. So there are simple hacks to be a better idea monkey. Remember, I was in a meeting once, and it was a guy named Joe Kim. You've all seen Joe Kim if you fly United or watch Chase ads, because he's a Asian person and he's an actor on the side, but he runs an agency and he worked for me for a number of years. I got out of a room once and I said, man, you're the best brainstormer I've ever been in a room with. He goes, dude, I suck at brainstorming. I'm like, what are you talking about? I was just in a room with you. You had like 100 ideas. He goes, yeah, I was using a framework. So he was using a framework called Scamper, where he was in his mind going, it's an acronym, going through each one of the letters and having an idea against the letter. It was forcing him to think differently about a problem because he doesn't do it naturally. And in Plan D and Free the Idea Monkey, I have all kinds of frameworks. Frameworks are things like, what would Jesus do as a framework? When you think about it, what would Steve Jobs do? What would Elon Musk do? When you can look at a problem through someone else's lens, it liberates you from having a stupid or silly idea. When you ask your employees, all right, I know we don't have a lot of money, but I have what if I know a member who would pay $10 million to solve this? Now, how would you solve it? Wow, $10 million. Well, if we had $10 million, here's what I'd do. Great. So that's the idea. Now let's reverse engineer it and try to figure out how to do it with a little bit less money. Those types of frameworks liberate operators from their own strengths. That could get us in trouble. That could cost too much. And there are similar things that operators can do, or ringleader or idea monkeys can do that are in the book as well.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Mike, for sharing your heart and your mind with the club leaders today. I've always wondered if there's dancing in heaven, and I know now that Ruthie's there, that there is dancing in heaven, and I know you're gonna be dancing with her one day. Thank you for sharing your mind and your heart with us, and I look forward to seeing you in Chicago next time I'm in town. Love you, bro.
Love you, buddy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mike. May 17th, that is our next Heart-Led Leader Florida Club Managers Association webinar. It is Randy Gravitt, and Randy Gravitt's a special leader. He wrote a book called Unstuck, and many of you know Chick-fil-A's story. We had Mark Miller, Executive Vice President of Chick-fil-A, tell the Chick-fil-A story. But of all of Chick-fil-A, the 40, 50 years they've been in business and the multi-billion-dollar business they built, the #1 most profitable restaurant in the world. There's only one thought leader of the 17,000 authors and thought leaders, including myself, in the world. Only one can tell the Chick-fil-A story and has the licensed permission to use Chick-fil-A material. Only one. So if you want to learn about Chick-fil-A, only one person outside of Chick-fil-A can do that. That's Randy Gravitt. And I said, well, that's a pretty big responsibility. And then Randy went to one of my Heart-Led Leader retreats this past year, and this guy's brilliant. And so Beth and I invited him to join us on May 17th for our next webinar. Speaking of Beth, her and I had this crazy idea to how to really serve the club members during COVID. And most leaders said, okay, COVID's over, we're done with this. But she has been so committed to doing these Heart-Led Leader webinars just to serve you. And I want to thank my partner, Beth, for just never giving up on this idea, because I love it. And I love bringing all these thought leaders to your hearts and to your minds. We look forward to seeing you on May 17th, and have a blessed day. God bless.